Hello and welcome back to BuckShots with Luke and Trevor. We're here again breaking down Bucks games, previewing Bucks games, talking about players, injuries, transactions, everything that coincides with the Milwaukee Bucks. We'll probably cover in one way or another on the show, plus a little bit more. We're happy with everyone watching a replay, whatever. Be sure to follow Flurry Sports on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube. And follow Trevor and I at Luke Rhyme on Twitter, at TrevorLand2 on Twitter, and throw a follow out to all the other good people working out at Flurry. It's a good organization, good place to get all your sporting news. But Trevor, I guess we can just get right into it. The Bucks had a odd week to say the least. I think. Last time we were on about a half hour before the game against the Spurs, a game in which they lost. In that game, let me pull up the stats here. In that game, we saw another Giannis game. You know, he had 28-13, 3 assists, 11 for 18 shooting. Outside of that, you got 19 from Chris Middleton on 8 for 21 shooting. And then your third highest scorer was Grayson Allen, with 12 points, 4 of 11 shooting. All 4 of his shots were made threes. Trevor, the Bucks had beaten the Spurs before, lost now. Did you watch this game, or you just mentioned you kind of read about it a little bit? What are your thoughts coming from this?
It was a tough game to dissect because not only did the Bucks shoot horribly from three, but so did the Spurs. With that being said, though, it's much more out of the ordinary for the Bucks to shoot bad from three because they have so many more good shooters. This game was just one of those games where it just seemed like the Bucks were flat. I mean, all night. Giannis 0 for 3, Middleton 2 for 7, Semi and Nora combined for 0 for 10. And when that happens, this game also didn't have Bobby Portis, didn't have any Dante, obviously. When you're losing that depth, I also no Brook. When you don't have that depth, you need to rely on that shooting. It just wasn't there.
Yeah, and you just hit on it there that they were out how many of the scorers with Dante, Bobby. I mean, Drew Holiday didn't play, Brook Lopez didn't play. Obviously, you'd like to see them, but I don't know. To me, I guess he kind of had to step up in this role, but it's a little concerning when Grayson Allen is your third leading scorer. He feels like the kind of player who can, sit in a corner and hit a three every now and then, play some good defense, draw a couple fouls. But I understand with the injuries, it does make sense that Grayson Allen would probably be, at least top 5 in scoring. It just happened he turned out to be number 3 this game.
Yeah, and the other thing that was interesting was the free throws. Bucks only got 16, Spurs got 24. And obviously, Brook isn't there, so that presence inside isn't there as much. But other than Giannis, nobody's getting to the line. You look at Middleton; he had 21 shots. He only got to the line once. That's concerning to me. And I know we don't have a lot of guys that go out there and seek fouls, but you got to get to the line to win. And this is one of those games. A couple threes drop, maybe get some more free throws. It's completely flipped script, but they didn't have any of that.
Yeah, and kind of going off that a little bit with Giannis getting, he's the one who's kind of, getting the fouls called. He's basically the only one that's consistently getting into the line. Giannis had 7 turnovers in this game. And I don't know if that's because, Greg Popovich has been in the league forever and he kind of knows how to game plan around. I mean, he's seen every single player to come into the NBA for like the last 20 years, and he knows how to game plan around it a little bit. But I'm wondering if Giannis is trying to do a little bit too much getting those fouls. I don't know about you, but it kind of seems like when he goes to the hole a little bit, sometimes he'll dribble off his knee or he won't get those fouls called and resulting in a turnover. And I think that does play, that kind of stops momentum a little bit. That hurts the Bucks in general on both offense and defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and that's a lot what we saw before last year and
Hmm.
early in the playoffs last year. He just tried to do too much. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the Toronto season series ended the way it did 2, 3 years back. But you got to think that because he showed us in the playoffs this past year, especially later on, that he isn't doing that anymore. He trusts his teammates. You know, the continued absences, they have to be getting in his head right by now for sure.
Right. And we kind of missed the mark on this in our predictions a little bit. I think we both said the Bucks were going to win. It was going to go over. I think it went under and whatever. It was just an odd game, like you said. It was just a weird game. The Spurs are one of those teams who aren't great, but they're going to play a little scrappy, and you're going to have to you're going to have to beat them in order to win. You're not going to get by with lucky calls and stuff like that. Kind of transitioning into the next day, Sunday, the back-to-back Utah Jazz, a team you're definitely not going to beat. Trying to get lucky. You have to come out and give your best game to beat them. Bucks lost this game 107-95. I'll just rip off right away. The big takeaway for me from this game is even with the Thanasis starting at the center, Rudy Gobert only took 3 shots. I know there's a Bucks podcast, but the Jazz can't win if Rudy Gobert is only putting the ball in the hoop 2 out of 3 times. So I don't know. I mean, the Bucks obviously did a good job limiting him, but he's such a big factor that he needs to play a role. And I don't know if the Bucks figured out how to stop him or just an off game. But that was my big takeaway from this game. I don't know about you, Trevor, but
Yeah, I mean, you're paying this guy so much money, and yet you have guys like Mike Conley shooting 11 shots, which he should. But, you're paying a max deal to shoot 3 times and get 4 blocks and a couple boards. Like, what are you playing with that money? Because you're clearly not doing the best decision. For me, and I'm sure you'd agree, I was pretty pleased with this game, right?
yeah,
Like the Bucks lost by 12. They shot again, that theme horribly from 3. Granted, while that was contributed for Giannis shooting 11 threes, I love him. He should never be shooting that many. But for a game, again, no Drew, no Dante, no Middleton with COVID. Losing by 12 to the Jazz, I mean, I'll take it. I'll take it for sure. Obviously, with all the other losses, you don't like to lose, but out of all the losses, this is the one I'm most okay with this week.
yeah, for sure. Especially the Jazz they're not a bad team by any means. This game kind of reminded me a little bit. The Bucks are kind of banged up here. The Jazz are kind of on top of the NBA world right now. It kind of reminded me of Packers Cardinals game last week. It's just different result. One player who for the Jazz who's an absolute stud is Donovan Mitchell. You're gonna have a tough time containing Donovan Mitchell, whoever you are, no matter what player you are. But I think the Bucks did fine on him. He shot 10 for 18. Donovan Mitchell, I feel like you're either gonna get 10 for 18 or a 5 for 21 kind of game. They held him to it's tough to say they held him to 28 points, but I watched a little bit of this game. I was in and out doing some work stuff, but I watched a little bit of it. And Donovan Mitchell could have had more points than 28. He had some open shots he missed. So I'm just concerned especially with Chris Middleton out and Dante out and Drew Holiday's coming back, but we don't know how much he's going to play, minutes restriction, whatever. Wing defense might be a little bit of a problem if Rodney Hood. If Rodney Hood can step up, great. I don't see Grayson Allen being a lockdown defender or anything. He's athletic, kind of goes for gambles a lot, so that kind of hurts a little bit. But I don't know if you feel the same way, Trevor. But wing defense seems to be a problem right now, especially with 2 key wing players out.
Yeah, and this is a game where obviously he kind of helps, kind of doesn't. But I was surprised they didn't throw Sandro in the
Yeah,
mix on the guards. He's so much bigger. Obviously, his defense is not great, but we talked about all the guys they have out, and Sandro only plays 5 minutes. That just
right.
doesn't make sense to me. Rodney Hood played 11 minutes, only took 3 shots. He doesn't give you anything defensively, so why is he in the game? Robinson played 24 minutes. I just don't understand why you're not experimenting with him more, especially on the defensive side. See if you can find something, because to your point, this wing defense is it's not doing it. It's just not cutting it right now.
I wonder too that in these kind of past couple of years, if the wing defense has kind of been similar, it's just been getting bailed out with Giannis and Brook Lopez inside defense. So I don't know if that's something to watch for. I mean, it's hard to watch for with players out, but it seems to me a little bit that Giannis and Brook Lopez are bailing out these wing players as guys drive by and go to the lane a little bit.
Yeah, another thing that I think was just, ridiculous this game. The Bucks shot 21 had 21 more shots, 4 more three-pointers. They had 21 less free throws.
Yeah,
I get, again, Giannis is the big guy. He's really the only one attacking. He should never have 2 free throws in a game, he should at the least have 2 free throws a quarter.
Yeah.
For the team to have 6 is a pretty big black eye because I mean that was really the difference. Not only did the Bucks shoot poorly, but they had the shots. Rebounds were the same, 44-44. But I mean, good lord, I mean the free throws were just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's tough too. I don't know if I just talked about him, but Rudy Gobert is such a big presence. I don't know if these whole we've been talking about the last couple of weeks now, these rule changes. I don't know if they're trying to pertain that a little bit, and I think that helps out Rudy Gobert defensively immensely. Because basically all he has to do is stand there and put his arms up, and if guys jump into him, they're not going to get a foul called. So he's just such a big presence. It's tough to play around him. It's tough to, especially with new rules like this, it's tough to get fouls on it. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say no. This is a tough team too. Royce
Yeah.
O'Neal, Bogdanovich, they're a naturally big team. So when you also don't have a center, those guys are gonna kill you. And they didn't look great, but defensively they were posing more of a challenge than they usually would.
Yeah. Another thing that came out of this game is when we talked about Giannis getting to the hole and getting fouled and stuff like that. He came down a little awkwardly on his knee and he's kind of limping a little bit, rubbing his knee towards the end of the game. I mean, he played the next couple of games. It doesn't seem to be that big of a factor, but it kind of scares me a little bit if Giannis is already has knee soreness, 5-6 games into the season.
Yeah, and it's so tough too because you have all these guys out. So I'm sure Giannis has gone on record saying his knee still isn't where he wants it to be after his hyperextension last playoffs. But with all these guys out, I mean, what are you gonna do? They're losing, but imagine how many more games they'd be losing if Giannis didn't play.
Yeah.
So it's so tough. I really hope when the other guys get healthy that they really give them some games off because you can't have that knee be anything less than at least 90%.
Right. And I know this is a little, fantasy a little bit, but do you think the Bucks are already looking at, getting someone, deadline's still a long ways away. Do you think they're already looking at someone if Giannis already has his knee going on?
I think they have to be,
Yeah.
right? I mean, all these injuries, it's tough, but you got to be searching for another big because these bigs just are not cutting it. We're going to get into that a little later, I think, but I mean, boy, it shows just how thin this team is without Brook Lopez.
Right. So, Trevor, you had mentioned it a little bit there, kind of moving on from the Jazz, but Chris Middleton got put into COVID protocol. Seems that's what's going on with Wisconsin sports right now. But and we just talked about it. Wing defense not great. Chris Middleton's all right defender, but you're not going to get a player who can defend like Chris Middleton and play offense like Chris Middleton. Maybe outside, the superstars, Klay Thompson, whatever, for wing players. But who needs to step up now that Chris Middleton's out?
I think it's got to be George Hill, right?
Yeah,
And looking at the Pistons game, he shot 4 shots, no threes. I think 2 years ago he was the best 3-point percentage in the league.
right.
You fast forward to the Knicks, 2 for 2, 2 shots, 2 threes. If in that game, Connaughton wasn't hitting, Grayson Allen was, but we talked about it. Grayson Allen, he can step up in games like that. But if guys like Connaughton, Hood, if those guys aren't hitting, you got to tell George Hill to start letting it fly because he's the one that I trust the most on this team.
The thing is, we know he can do it too. Just like you said, leading the league in 3-point percentage. If he gets going with Middleton out, probably another week yet or so, whatever. Whenever he tests negative after quarantine, whatever he's got going on, if George Hill can get the three ball going, that opens up so much more for Grayson Allen to drive, Giannis to drive, Bobby Portis to play his low post kind of turnaround jumper kind of shots. So to get production from the point guard position especially just opens up so much more for this offense, and I think it opens up a lot more for the defense. With teams chasing points, it makes it a little easier to kind of predict what teams are going to be doing defensively.
For sure. And, just from a momentum standpoint, too, right? Like, if you're shooting 29% from three, those are those games where the opponents go, we've played like shit, but we're still in it. And
Hmm.
now you hit a couple more of those threes, you get him knocked down, you open up the floor for George Hill, they have to collapse on him. I mean, that changes everything. The opponent's outlook, which is a huge deal that not a lot of people talk about.
Right, and then kind of transitioning, you mentioned the Pistons game a little bit, and we mentioned who's going to step up with Chris Middleton out. This game, there was um, Jordan Nora, um, Justin Robinson, and Bobby Portis combined for 39 points off the bench, which in my mind is incredible to see. Against Pistons are what a shitty team, whatever. Kate Cunningham's not having a great start to his NBA career, but just to see these guys step up and beat teams that you have to beat, it's just great to see. It's a little bit different. The shooting shots seem to go in tonight, or not tonight against the Pistons rather than Spurs Jazz. But to watch these guys come off the bench, play with energy, and get some points, give Giannis a little bit of a break on the offensive side of the ball. Um, it's nice to see. Pat Connaughton added 16 out of the starting lineup, but Giannis and Pat were the only two in double digits out in the starting lineup.
Yeah, and it's so great, but it's also so frustrating too, right? Because this
Right.
game is perfect example that you don't need Nora and Portis and Robinson to go out there and get you 20, 25 points. You just need 2, 3 guys to step up outside of Giannis each game. And it seems like every game outside of this one, guys are shooting to try to get hot. And that
Hmm.
just makes it worse. And that's what's so frustrating because they can do it. And it's like mentally there's a block that they don't think it's possible.
Right. you know, when we previewed this game last week, we said that maybe this is a game. Pistons aren't great. This is a game where you give Justin Robinson some run, you give Pat Connaughton some run, let Giannis, sit a little bit, and that seems to be what Budenholzer did. Nora 24 minutes, Robinson 24 minutes, Pat 25 minutes. Giannis was a leader at 26 minutes, but that's probably 14 minutes less than he plays in the playoffs, which is great to see, especially with these young guys, fresh legs, getting out and running against this Pistons team.
Yeah, and I like seeing that, and I especially like Giannis only after playing 27 minutes. And again, I'm gonna kind of beat an old drum with this, but Sandro had 6 minutes. This wasn't the game where the Bucks pulled away late. They were up 20, 15, 20 points pretty much the whole game. So again, I just don't see the point in 6 minutes there, especially with so many guys out still.
Yeah, yeah, and then we just mentioned that Kate Cunningham's kind of had a bad start to his NBA career.
Yeah.
That was proved in this game. He shot 0 for 9 from the 3-point line. I don't think Cade Cunningham came in, as a knockdown shooter out of Oklahoma State, but he's a guy who can make plays. He ran 29 minutes for the Pistons this game, but it seemed like the Bucks were able to contain him. He's coming off of an injury, whatever. But if you're playing 29 minutes as the number one draft pick, you got to score more than 6 points and go 0 for 9 on shooting threes.
Yeah, and I mean, he wasn't helped by Sadiq Bey also going 2 for 13 from the field, but I think this is more of a problem with the Pistons too. I think the Bucks did a good job, but I mean, you have a guy like Cunningham, he can't shoot. You got to surround him with shooters, right?
Yeah,
Kind of like Lonzo Ball his first year with the Lakers. That's why it didn't work. Cade Cunningham, like you said, he's a playmaker. If you don't give him any shooters, teams will just let him shoot and they're going to win. I mean, as a team, 17% from deep that game, 32 from the field. I mean, that was pitiful, and obviously some of that was the Bucks, but not all.
right. Um, Shout out Luka Garza. I didn't know he was on the Pistons. I don't like him, but interesting to see. Interesting to see. I don't even remember watching him play that game. That's how much I care about Luka Garza. But um, to transition, what do we have on the list here? Oh, I just had Giannis has a higher 3-point percentage this year than Chris Middleton. That's pretty interesting to see.
Yeah, and I like him shooting it, but I think somebody on the coaching staff needs to step up. I think, to be honest, a lot of people on the coaching staff need to step up. I feel like people are afraid to talk to him, especially now that he's a Finals MVP and all this. Players need to be coached,
Yep.
and Giannis likes to be coached. Giannis should be limited
Shout out Jason
unless
Kidd.
left. Yeah, yeah. Shout out Jason Kidd. Giannis should be limited at most to be shooting 7, 8 threes a game.
Yeah.
That should be the most. And I like him using it. I like him shooting it because he has to shoot it. But somebody's got to wrangle him in, especially those transition pull up threes. It's clearly not when he hits those, right? He's more in line with the being set shooting. So for the life of me, I don't understand why he falls in love with those in transition so early in the shot clock.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I'm almost wondering if he's, obviously he's shooting better than he has in his career from 3 point, right? I'm wondering if he's just, doing it to try to get into a rhythm, get that momentum going. But I don't, like you said, you need to coach because taking one of those shots can instantly kill momentum. You take a shot and you airball, and that's all the air sucked out of the arena. Giannis is coming. Giannis is not going to stop shooting. We know that he's got that mentality. But once you take a couple pull-ups in a row and miss three in a row, you got to think that maybe I should start going to the hole instead of pulling up for three in transition every single time you're coming down the court.
Yeah, and this isn't a problem with just Giannis wanting to do too much. Like we've seen
Right.
this all the time. Somebody's got to step up, and that was part of the reason why, when Budenholzer was under a lot of heat, I said if he doesn't beat the Nets, he should be fired because I think that's one of the things he does such a poor job of. And this is the time. Like you need the coach to step up. I don't expect him to win every game, right, with this team,
Right.
but God, man, this is your team. Wrangle them in.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering too, especially with Chris Middleton out, maybe Giannis feels a little bit more burdened to kind of carry this team, put the team on his back a little bit. But I think that's just so tough to do in the NBA is to put the whole team on your back and try to do everything. It's a little different than football when you can be like, Aaron Rodgers and, you know,
Mhm.
bail out bad defenses for the last 15 years or, be a dominant starting pitcher like Jacob DeGrom and just, zero a guy every time. The NBA is it's tough for one player to dominate unless you're someone like Kevin Durant or Kobe Bryant or something like that.
Yeah, and to your point, Giannis doesn't have the three, and he's not as dominant as Shaq was, and even if he was, this is the wrong era for that.
Right.
So the more he forces it, the worse it gets. He's like one of those Chinese finger traps, right?
Hmm.
The more he tries, the worse it gets for him.
Right. So, Trevor, before we talk about the shit show that was the game last night, you had told me that we should talk about Brook Lopez a little bit. So I'm going to give you some space here to give your thoughts on the whole Brook Lopez situation.
Yeah, I think his injury is way bigger than people think. I mean, it's surprised me even. Looking at that Nets game, one of the reasons why the Bucks won, they shot 19 more shots, and
Yeah.
part of
Right.
that was because they had 10 more rebounds. They had 54 rebounds. Now that's only one game, but the Bucks right now they're 18th in NBA in rebounds at 45, and there is no way in hell they should be below some of the teams ahead of them, like the Thunder, like the Grizzlies, like the Kings, and Brooks' presence. He doesn't bring down like 20 boards a game, but his ability to box out, keep those damn guards out, and get 5 or 6, that's a huge difference. And we're seeing in those games against the Knicks, the Spurs, they're getting 40 rebounds. They're getting out rebounded. Hell, a little preview, the Knicks out rebounded the Bucks 59-37,
Yeah.
right? You swing that 5 rebounds the other way, suddenly it's a completely different game. And so I think him being gone, I think arguably is the biggest problem the Bucks have.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. In my mind, it's always been, a big key to win basketball is offensive rebounds, right? Get the offensive rebound, kick back out for a three, hit the three. That kind of deflates the defense a little bit when they have to, run another possession on defense. And Brook Lopez, just like you said, he's not this guy who's like Rudy Gobert, who's averaging like 17 rebounds a game or anything like that. But he's a guy who mixes it up inside. He keeps the paint clean. If he's not getting the rebound, he's either tipping it to Giannis or he's making sure that his guy is not getting the rebound. And just like you said, I don't see that happening right now without Brook Lopez. Another thing I just wanted to add there is, they say Brook Lopez has back soreness. The dude has had back soreness for 3 weeks now. When are we going to start upgrading it to a more however you want to say it, a larger injury?
Yeah, this is a weird situation for me because he obviously got hurt at or after the Nets game. There was no play, looking at back where he had a hurt back against the Nets. His status has been murky, like you said, for 3 weeks. Something's going on here.
Right.
And I'm not saying conspiracy theory, but something's not right because there is no way a back soreness is 3 weeks and with no updates. So, they are purposely not saying anything about him, which makes me extremely worried because if you're not saying something, it's probably bad news.
Right. I was gonna say too. We talked about interior defense last week a little bit. Talking about rebounding now. Be nice to have Brooks' brother Robin on the team right now.
Oh, yeah. And going quick look into that, Knicks game. Rose had 8 rebounds. RJ
Hmm.
Barrett had 7. I love them. They're tenacious players. They're run by Thibodeau. But good God, those guys should never combine for 15 rebounds on you. That
Right.
that's horrible.
Yeah. All right, Trevor. You ready to do it to dip into last night?
Yeah, I think so.
So the Bucks played the Knicks last night. The Knicks are a solid team. They're a contender in the East. I wouldn't say a contender, but they're one of the better teams in the East. They made a nice playoff run last year. They got some guys on their team. Derrick Rose, Julius Randle, R.J. Barrett. Um, but it was nice to see the Bucks up 21 points,
Hmm.
only to see them squander it and lose by 15 points. Um, I don't know. I texted you before this, Trevor. I didn't watch much of this game. I was out working, doing whatever. But just from reading and looking at the box score, like this is a pretty bad loss in my mind.
It's horrible, and again, 59 to 37 rebounds. That should never happen. I don't care if you run a whole team out of guards out there. There comes a point where that's a lack of effort, especially when you have guys that are um, really good vertically in the air, like Connaughton, Thanasis, Giannis, Bobby. But I mean, shooting wise, from three, okay, they were decent. From the field, not great, but they were decent. Free throws were about the same. It's just about the damn rebounds. And the
Hmm.
Knicks wanted it more. And to not only be up 19 at the end of the first, to be up 21 in the first, but to only be up 7 at half. And then, for me, they got it close. What was it? I think it was 91-87. And then I think they scored, what, 4 points in like 8 minutes in the fourth quarter, something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, these guys just completely fell flat at home, nonetheless. That's what scares me a lot. And,
yeah,
it wasn't turnovers, they only had 14.
yeah. I don't know about you, but to me, this Knicks team is kind of coming together a little bit. I think Tom Thibodeau is a great coach for him, just like you said, with that tenacity. Derrick Rose has a relationship with Tom Thibodeau. Whether you call that good or bad, who knows? But RJ Barrett's young; he can run. Julius Randle is still very young. Feel like he feels like he's been in the league for 15 years, but he's still 26, 27, somewhere in there years old. Um, the big thing for me, Derrick Rose scored 23 off the bench, right? And Knicks don't have. I mean, Kemba Walker's kind of. I don't know. I don't know how you feel about him, but I think he's kind of over the hill a little bit. I thought he should have stayed in Charlotte. Evan Fournier, you're not going to get, you know, 20 points a night from Evan Fournier. He didn't have a great game. The only three players that had a good game on their team were Julius Randle, Derrick Rose, and I guess you can say RJ Barrett. I mean, he shot 8 for 21, but he did put in, 20 points. He got to the free throw line once. So the Knicks kind of scare me a little bit. I think Thibodeau, he runs guys. We know that. And he's got a good team to run right now, especially with Mitchell Robinson being so as young as he is, to kind of play that inside a little bit.
I mean, yeah, and I agree. The thing that scared me the most, you talked about Julius Randle. He had a good game, right? That's nothing different than what we see from him on a nightly basis. 32 points is a lot, but he shot 22 times. RJ Barrett, he had a decent game. Nothing, outside of what we usually see. But I mean, Derrick Rose was 8 for 12
Yeah.
inside the arc. What the hell is that, right?
Hmm.
Like he only had one free throw, 23 points, again, 8 boards. How? Like how is that possible? I don't care who's on him. He's a good player, but when you have the rim protection to help you back there too, I mean, how are you letting him get in the paint? I mean, that is
Right.
just inexcusable. And going back to Brook, I think Brook changes his complete game completely. I think if they have Brook, the Bucks win. But I mean, that just shows you how desperate it is without Brook. Because if Rose is getting it done inside the arc like that, I mean, what are we doing here?
Right. Derrick Rose looked a little bit like his MVP or his MVP season too. I know that one double clutch layup he had was pretty nice. Julius Randle did the
Mhm.
same thing. But you're right. That's that interior defense not being there. You can only run Giannis in the paint for so long with worries about fouls or whatever. And then who do you have running that backup center? You got Thanasis starting, who is not a big guy. He's going to give you everything he has, but he's not really that great of an NBA player outside of his run. Um, and the Bobby Portis, who's not known for his defense, those are the two big guys other than Giannis that the Bucks have running right now. And that just goes back to the whole Brook Lopez thing. But in this game, we did see Drew Holiday return as well. Drew Holiday, 20 minutes, 10 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 of 8 shooting, and 1 of 3 from the 3-point line. Trevor, were you happy with his performance coming off of injury?
Not at all. Like shooting, I mean, we saw it in the playoffs, take it or leave it. I don't care who you are coming back from injury. Maybe this is the inner Bo Ryan in me. 5 turnovers in a game is ridiculous, and
Yep.
it's especially bad when you play 20 minutes. Um, I mean, he had 5 of the team's 14, and I get he's come back from injury, but I mean, what are we doing? That's just bad decision making at that point.
Right. In this game, too, we saw Grayson Allen step up a little bit. 22 points, 6 and 9 shooting from 3, which is great to see, especially with Chris Middleton out. So that kind of answers, part of our question of who's going to step up.
Mhm.
And it's good to see Grayson Allen step up for as much as me and you both hated him in college.
Yeah. Well, and that's oh damn mosquito in here, son of a bitch. Um, the other thing was the Bucks came out the gates 8 for 16 from deep, which obviously there's going to be a regression with that, but then they shot 8 for 27 from deep after that. I mean, it just goes to show how streaky the shooting is, and we talked about guys forcing it. Connaughton was 2 for 8, 1 for 7 from threes. uh, Again, I mean, this is Connaughton we're talking about, not even Giannis. You
Hmm.
got to be telling this guy to stop once in a while. If it's not your night, there's plenty other places to contribute. You're hurting us more if you force it again.
Right. And that just goes back to the whole conversation about how hard it is to put a whole team on your back in the NBA.
Hmm.
Um, Trevor, do you have anything else you want to talk about for that happened this week in Bucks basketball? Otherwise, we can get into our preview for next week.
I just want to wipe the slate clean, but the one thing that is interesting, and obviously there's really nothing more than coincidence behind it. The Bucks are 4-5 right now. Obviously, not ideal. I think Bucks fans could argue with all the injuries we have, it's not great, but I think people would say 5-4, 6-3 would be great. So really
Hmm.
only a 1-2 game difference. But the Bucks are 4-5, 3-1 away, 1-4 at home. For a team that has one of the best home courts in basketball, it's certainly a startling thing to see.
Right. And that 4-5 record puts them at 10th in the East right now, just for a kind of idea of where the Bucks are sitting for playoff picture. I know playoffs are a long ways away, but so this upcoming week, the Bucks are at Washington on Sunday. They're at Philadelphia on Tuesday. Then they have to travel to New York, where they're at the Knicks Wednesday. Then they have the Celtics at Celtics Friday. So they're on the road 4 games this week. They got their Eastern Conference road trip here. Trevor, I guess I can start here. I would be happy with a 2-2 record here, honestly. Just to get out of the East without a losing record, I think that would be a win for us, especially with the injuries. The Wizards, what do they have outside Bradley Beal? I mean, Montrezl Harrell's playing well this year, but are they really a team that you're like, oh, shoot, this is going to be a tough game? No, not really. 76ers, new look 76ers. I mean, Joel Embiid, it's going to be tough to defend him, but how much run is he going to get? Knicks, I mean, is it a revenge game for the Bucks? Kind of prove that we're not going to give up another 21-point game. And I think the Celtics could be a tough one. We saw last year, game 1, Jason Tatum hit a game-winning 3. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown are both good players, and it might be a little tough with that wing defense.
Yeah, I'd be ecstatic with 2-2 because obviously, like you said about Washington, they're there, but they're a damn good rebounding team,
Yeah, they
and
are.
that's scary. Philly, I mean, again, damn good rebounding team, big team. New York revenge game, but we know New York. I mean, those fans are going nuts. It's
Hmm.
going to be popping there. Same with Boston, and again, they've shot horribly, but if you don't get the rebound, so I get to listeners out there, I'm harping the same thing over and over again. But to your point, 4 games, 2-2, I definitely take that. Just stay afloat until you get guys back.
Right. And usually we end these shows with our underdog picks. The Bucks don't have a game tonight, so we don't have any underdog picks. So I guess we can just kind of free ball it here and kind of give predictions on game by game. How many points do you think Bucks going to score or whatever. So just to give you a heads up, against Washington, the last matchup last year, and I know it's a totally different Washington team this year, Bucks won 135-134. That's a very high score. Um, I would say, the rebounding alone, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of jack shots in this game. Bradley Beal, we know, loves to shoot the ball. Montrezl Harrell loves to get the ball up when he gets the ball in the paint. So I see a lot of misses in this game. I do think the Bucks win this game. I think the Wizards are playing a lot better than what they are right now. They're 6-3. So I'll take the Bucks. I don't know what the spread is. I mean, we don't have any odds out or anything, but I'll say the Bucks by 5+.
I'm going to go the other route. I think the Wizards win. There's only a difference of 3 rebounds per game, but the Wizards are fifth in rebounds.
Hmm.
And this team doesn't scare me, but I think this is the perfect storm, kind of like we talked about. I can see this being a game kind of like the Spurs game in terms of Giannis tries to force too much. I mean, we need guys to step up. Will they? That's always the question. But I think this game is going to be close no matter what. Would it shock me if the Bucks win? No, but I'll side on the place of a loss, which is crazy thinking that coming
Right,
into the season.
right. And then bringing into our next game, the 76ers, last time they played last year, just like the Wizards, it's kind of a new look Sixers team. Bucks won 132-94. Um, One stat here that I have, that's interesting is the 76ers have the lowest, or their 30th, their last in pace of the game. So they want to slow the ball down. They want to work it around, find the best shot, get a couple touches into Joel and beat a little bit. I think if the Bucks run a little bit, I mean, this game, I think the Bucks could easily get this game out of hand pretty quickly.
Yeah, and this will be an interesting game too because because they slow down that pace of play, like you said, they're dead last in the league in rebounds,
Hmm.
which is crazy for how big of guys they have. And they're just going to beat you on the defensive side of the ball. This is one of those games where this just feels like one of those statement Bucks games on national TV, kind of like the Nets games where the shots are falling and people say, "All right, we're okay. We'll be all right."
Right.
Um, but it'll be interesting to see. Joel Embiid is a great player. We'll see how it plays out. But with Ben Simmons out, I mean that helps or
Yeah.
hurts. I don't know.
Yeah. Who really knows with Ben Simmons? Ben Simmons doesn't even know what that even means. But second to last game here, we got the Knicks again. We just talked about the Knicks. Um, do you see this game going the same as last game, or any different, or what are your thoughts? Because last game it seems to be like a fluke to me, blowing a 21-point lead, but they collect 9 to 10 more rebounds. I think the Bucks do win that game last night. So I wonder if they build off of that a little bit, knowing that they got the Knicks coming up again.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see the Knicks too because they also play um, Philly before they play us.
Hmm.
They play Philly on the 8th. We play them on the 9th. So they'll have an extra rest day in there. But, emotionally, I think that's going to drain them a little bit. I think the Bucks come out for blood. I think the reason they're so good on the road is because they have that, screw you attitude. It's ours. Like, we're going to come in here and take it from you. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But to your point, overall, no signs point to me that this is going to change from a Knicks win. It was a fluke, but are the Bucks even going to start that hot? Is what I question.
Right. And just like we said against the Knicks, they're going to run. That means the Bucks are going to have to run, to be in it. The Knicks are going to run, and then they're going to set up offense. If they're not going to transition basket, they're going to kick it out and probably take all 24 seconds of the shot clock to find the best shot available. And that's where the Bucks pace kind of comes into play here a little bit. This is where you definitely need another Grayson Allen game. You need George Hill to step up a little bit. Hopefully Drew Holiday, is all fine back in the lineup. He can kind of cut down those RJ Barrett and Derrick Rose kind of taking over the game there a little bit. But our last game is um, Friday, November 12th against the Boston Celtics on ESPN. So I'm sure the announcers are going to have no idea what's going on. Probably don't even know that Brook Lopez is hurt. They're going to be asking, where's Brook Lopez the whole game? But last time they played was March 26th of last year. Boston beat the Bucks 122-114. This is a game that I'm most excited for this week because on Twitter, people either love the Celtics or they hate the Celtics. It's kind of like the Lakers. People either say the Celtics are the best, team in the East or the worst team in the East. And I think a lot of people are kind of on that idea of the Bucks are pretty good and are one of the better teams in the East. So I'm really excited to see how good Boston is because, believe it or not, I've not watched a Boston Celtics game yet this year.
Yeah, and they have a lot of big guys, but their big guys are Horford, Cantor, Robert Williams. Cantor's only played 2 games, I should say, but like their big guys aren't traditional big guys that would scare me for having that many. And Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have been shooting horribly,
Yeah,
except for I think one great game for Jaylen Brown. They are winning strictly on their defense. This could be a very, very ugly game at the end of an exhausting road trip for the Bucks.
yeah. And I was just about to bring that up. This is going to be a long Eastern Conference road trip for the Bucks. If they lose this game, I could definitely see it. Just kind of being lazy out there, not running for loose balls, not running up and down the court very much. So that's what I'm thinking has happened. Celtics also have my one of my least favorite players in the league, and Marcus Smart, who's kind of trouble in paradise there a little bit. He's asking to see the ball a little bit more, and I'm just still amazed that Marcus Smart learned how to shoot a 3-point shot.
Yeah, yeah, I'm surprised he learned how to not flop. It's
Yeah,
interesting, you get rules that take away flopping and harm you, and suddenly he doesn't do it anymore. It's just crazy how that works.
right. Crazy how he brags about how great on defense he is, and
Yeah,
now now he's kind of went down in his defense a little bit.
yeah.
But Trevor, that's all I got. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Last week, this coming week, Bucks in general, NBA in general.
I think if this team right now, I don't know about you. I'm sure you're in the same boat as me. I'm not panicked yet. I mean, you
No,
look at the difference between us and the Heat, the Bulls, 2.5 games between us, the Nets, Knicks, Wizards. 4 through 6. That's 2 games. So we're not panicked yet. I think if you go 1-3 on this road trip, and I think if Brook's status still isn't changing, I think you need to panic in the sense that you need to start gauging other options because
hmm
clearly something is not working.
right.
I don't think they're not going to make the playoffs, especially seeing that the Raptors are 8 and we have playing games now. But,
hmm
this is very important to see how much fight you still have in this team.
Right, right. And we haven't seen the full five stars. I guess we haven't seen the full five starters yet because Dante hasn't played. Drew Holiday's been out. Chris Middleton's out now. Brook Lopez has been out forever. Really, the only constant in that starting lineup has been Giannis and maybe Pat Connaughton, Grayson Allen. But once these five starters come back together, all healthy, come midseason or later in the season, I think we'll both say that this Bucks team is definitely a lot different than it is, right at this moment.
Well, interesting thing too is looking at point differential. Bucks point differential per game is minus 1.3. Cleveland's 6-4. They're minus a half.
Right.
Mavericks are 5-3. They're minus 5.3. So when they win, it seems they win close, and when they lose, they're blown out. Like it's such a up and down dynamic. It's tough to kind of put a finger to.
Right, and I don't know about you, but I've always kind of thought that the NBA, like the first month or so is kind of just like a feel it out, like who's good on other teams. Who knew that Chris Duarte was going to be a stud on the Pacers,
Yeah.
and just kind of rotate some lineups in. You kind of give it an idea of what you want going forward by early December to Christmas. You even experiment a little bit more in there. So really, does the NBA season start until Christmas? Probably not. But NBA basketball is always great to watch.
Yeah, and it's tough, but I mean, teams started 3-1. So
hmm
losses to the Knicks, Jazz. That's not too bad. Just a couple that raised some eyebrows. So we'll see if it continues.
Yep. All right, that's all I got. On behalf of Trevor and myself, this was BuckShots with Luke and Trevor. We will be back next Saturday. Flurry Sports got a whole bunch of shows going on right now. We got fantasy football show, whole bunch of fantasy football shows. We got the ranking show. We have Start Situm. We have fantasy football reactions. Henry and Zach have a NASCAR show going on. We got Lombardi Sweep, and stay tuned because there might be a couple more shows coming out with college basketball on the horizon. Baseball is really right around the corner. But Follow all those shows. I'm sure you like sports if you're listening to this. Follow Flurry Sports on Twitter. Follow both of us on Twitter, and we will keep you updated with all the breaking news and everything.
And look at our Twitters. Next week's episode might be at a different time, just depending on when the Northwestern game is
Yep.
for Wisconsin. So
Yep.
keep posted.
All right, guys. Peace.